this video, we're going to practice measuring length. Measure the following lengths, and I have a link to an online ruler here. You can use this ruler. It will adjust to the size of your screen and give you a proper measurement ruler depending on the size of your screen. So we're asked to measure the length of line segment AB using centimeters as the unit of comparison. So your screen size may look different than my screen size, and also it may look different on your media lesson packet, but we're going to use this amount right here to represent 1 centimeter, and when we're measuring this length, we're measuring how many copies of this 1 centimeter are in this line segment. So what I have done is I've taken a piece of paper and I lined up the corner of so I ripped the edge off a piece of paper. I lined up the corner with this segment, so the leftmost corner is here, and then I wrote a mark on the paper where the rightmost piece of this unit of measure ends. And now I'm going to use that to measure from A to B. So you can do the same thing. If you want to stop and make that little piece of paper as a ruler, you can press pause. Okay. So I am starting at A. The leftmost piece of my paper is here, and the rightmost is here. So this is going to be 1 copy of 1 centimeter. It was a little bit more to the left. I made that thick there. So now I'm lining it up here on the leftmost and marking the rightmost. So that's 2 centimeters. I'm going to repeat this process. Here's 3 centimeters or 3 copies. Here's 4 centimeters or 4 copies. And it's more than 4. I'm going to draw 5. This is where 5 would be. Okay. And then I'm going to try to eyeball an estimate of this. So it looks like that's about halfway between 4 and 5. So the length is going to be 4.5 centimeters. Now measurement is always an approximation. Okay? So if I wanted a better approximation, I could take this 1 centimeter and I could cut this up into more pieces and then find where it matches. But I wouldn't get an exact value unless it exactly matches where our line segment ended. And if you think about it, you could always zoom in a little bit more and it might not exactly match. So we're always approximating when we're measuring. Yours might look a little bit different. That would be how accurate our measurement is. And then we could also talk about how precise it is. So let's look at the next one. We're asked to measure the length L of the base of the box using inches as a unit of comparison. So this represents 1 inch, and we want to measure the length of the box, which is this line segment. So notice they have the same attributes. They're both lines. So I want how many copies of this inch is in this L. So you'll want to make another ruler that's this length. And now I'm going to measure from left to right. So I'm lining up to the leftmost part of the arrow. There's my first inch. Now I'm lining the paper up at this tick mark, and here's my 2nd inch, 3rd inch, 4th inch, and here's where my 5th inch would be. Okay. So notice again, I have 1 copy of an inch, 2 copies, 3 copies, 4 copies, and it looks like this one, I would say that's about a half also. So this is approximately 4.5 inches. Okay. And notice you can also practice measuring these if you have an actual ruler. You can practice measuring in different units. Let's look at the last slide. Determine what units would be appropriate to use to measure the following lengths. Okay, we want to look at U.S. customary units and different types of metric units. Okay, so the distance from home to campus. Well, it depends on how far you live from campus. You probably don't live millimeters away or inches away. Chances are you live miles away. Okay, So we'll say for the distance from home to campus, even if you lived half a mile, you'd probably say that you lived miles, so you would measure it in miles. And as a metric unit, notice we have some comparisons here. A kilometer is about 6/10 of a mile, and that's usually the unit of measure we use for something like this. So we will put kilometer. Okay. Now again, notice we could write this in feet or meters, and we could measure it, but it wouldn't hold a lot of meaning for us. So if you live 10 miles from home, that would be 52,800 feet. So it's hard to conceive of what 52,800 feet is, so that's why we like to use different units. So a lot of these don't necessarily have one correct answer, but we want to use something where we can probably not have a fraction, okay? So it wouldn't say that something is 1/5 of a centimeter long. We'd probably use a smaller unit of measure, okay? But we don't want the numbers to be so big that we can't conceive of them either. Okay? Now the height of a water bottle. Okay? So I would go with the height of a water bottle. I would probably measure that in inches. Okay? So if you're not sure, grab a water bottle, grab a ruler. You could measure it in feet. It would probably be less, my guess is that it would be less than a foot tall, okay? So it's probably better to measure it in inches, but feet would be acceptable, okay? So notice down here for metric units, a centimeter is about the width of a small fingernail. They're approximately 2.5 centimeters in an inch. So we usually use centimeters when we use inches. They're somewhat comparable. Centimeters are smaller, so there would be more centimeters than inches, but this is a good estimate. So we will put centimeters. And now the length of an ant. Okay. Well, for a U.S. customary unit, our longest unit of, or our shortest unit of measure is inches, so we're going to use an inch. Okay. And then for the metric unit, well, we could use centimeters, and I'm almost thinking millimeters might work too. So millimeters are 1/10 the size of a centimeter. So notice a centimeter is about the width of a small fingernail, and I actually know the width of my thumbnail is about a centimeter. I use that sometimes to compare things. Okay, whereas a millimeter is about the size of a width of a dime. Okay, so think about comparing an ant to those two things. So I'm thinking if an ant was on my thumbnail, it might be a little bit shorter than one entire thumbnail for me. So that would be a fraction. So I might not want to use that, because with millimeters, since they're smaller, I'd have a number larger than 1. I could have maybe it's 6 or 7 millimeters. So we could say centimeters or millimeters here. I'm going to go with millimeters. And again, what gives these the most meaning to you is for you to come up with examples like these that make sense to you. So notice, as far as millimeters are concerned, I'm comparing them to the size of a width of a dime. And I know what that's like. I've had experience with dimes. I know how thick they are in general, and I could think of that as my unit of measure. If you don't use dimes anymore because you kids don't use change, then maybe a width of a dime doesn't have that much meaning for you. You could look up on the internet what are some things that are a millimeter wide. Okay, so make sure to find values that make sense to you.